This client had glute pain for over a year until she did this one stretch. That's what we're going to show you today. Hi, my name is Stephanie. I'm with Empower Physical Therapy, and we help clients avoid surgery, injections, and medications while getting their life back. Often clients have been to 7, 8, 9 different healthcare providers without finding a solution to their problem until they come here. And one of the biggest things that we say in our office is where the side of the pain is often not where the source of the problem is coming from. But unfortunately, in our medical system, we go right to the side of the pain. We also like to treat the symptoms in the medical system, and this just leads down to a lot of frustration. And so that's kind of what we're going to be talking about with this client. We're going to share kind of her story a little bit and what we did to help her get her life back. So one of the big things that she did, and we're going to show you the things that she did and tried that did not work. Her pain was in her glute, and she'd been to other physical therapy offices, and the big one that they showed her is like a lot of times they want to stretch their hip because it's tight through here. So one of the stretches that she was giving that did not work was this. They brought the leg in and they really tried to stretch that hip, to stretch that muscle that was tight. And here's the problem, is if you if that's a symptom, the tightness of the muscle is a symptom, then you're not going to solve the problem. And that's kind of what happens, is that they're stretching this and it's just a symptom. They also tried massage therapy. And when they went to massage, they went and rubbed the hip and they got all the tightness out. She felt great. And then it came back 2 to 3 hours later. And that just tells us that the hip is not a problem. The tightness in that hip is a symptom. We've got to get to why that is happening. And so that didn't work for her. They went to another physical therapy office, and these are some of the stretches that they gave her. They gave her some stretches and they said, well, we're going to work on core strengthening. And actually the strengthening of the muscles in the hip made her worse. So some of the things that she was doing was bringing her knees to their chest to kind of stretch those areas out and just kind of roll through there. She did those kind of things. They did the things where they went to the side to really stretch that hip, and those didn't work. She was doing exercises where she was bridging and just doing exercises, where she's trying to use the glute muscle because they wanted to strengthen the muscle. And all in all, it was just making her worse, and she was frustrated. No one ever thought to ask her other questions to figure out, is it coming from somewhere else? Is it really not a hip problem? Maybe it's a problem from somewhere else. And so when they came into our office, we started asking questions like, what have you tried? And she showed us everything. And we're like, yeah, that makes sense on why it's not helping you. And then we got into asking her questions like, well, tell me, when does your hip hurt? Like, what are you doing that makes it worse? And the first thing she said was, well, when I sit, it really hurts. And I was like, interesting. What else are things that can make it worse? She's like, well, when I bend down to pick something up, I can really feel it in my hip. Awesome. And then we asked, well, what are things, can you get in positions or postures that make it feel better? And she goes, well, when I start walking and moving around, it actually feels better. And I was like, well, that doesn't really make sense for a hip, because typically if you're going to put weight on the hip, then that oftentimes will be something that will make it worse. Not always, but often. So we're already thinking, this may actually be coming not from the hip. It's probably coming from somewhere else, and like the back. So we're like, okay, cool. We're going to try this exercise. We're going to see if it works, but I want to get some baseline. So we just had her kind of move. And the things that we had her do is like bending forward, and she couldn't bend forward very far, and she definitely felt it in her hip. We had her go in and bend backwards, and while she didn't have any pain in her back, she was just feeling really stiff. And so that's one thing that we wanted to see if we can improve. There were just baselines for us. And then we had her do some side glides just to see if that caused any pain. No problems there really at all. We did some motion in her hip where we took her hip and we moved it backwards just to see if that could produce any pain. And actually her hip moved fine. She could move it backwards, felt it a little bit, but we definitely could move it backwards. When we had her do things where we had her stretch, like move her hip this way, we had her move her hip this way, where we were actually moving it ourselves to see how her joint would feel. None of it really produced any pain. Now, when we did bring her knee to her chest on the one side and we were testing her range, and we were bringing her knee in like this to see what that felt like, if there's any limitation from one side or the other, that did produce some of her pain. So this may be things that will be similar to you. You may hear this story and go, oh wow, this sounds like me. And if that's the case, this is the exercise that we showed her. So what we had her do was, we knew that it was probably coming from her back. And when she tells us that bending makes her worse and that when she stands and walks, it makes her better, standing and walking is little mini extensions. So we knew that we wanted to move her in an extended position. So we had her lie on her stomach and her hands were underneath her shoulders, and we just had her press up like this. And if you come to the top, you can start with movement. You may be stiff at first. That's okay. And you may, if you notice that you feel like, oh, it might give you a little bit of soreness in the hip, if you come down and it goes away, I'm okay with that. So we just keep on pressing up. And what she noticed was like, wow, actually, it feels better as I move backwards. And we're like, that's awesome. So now let's go and take it arms straight and blow your air out. That's going to get everything to relax in the back. And then we're going to come back down. And we had her do that a few times. And then we had her stand up. And we wanted to retest her baseline. So we retest her going forward. And she was like, wow, that actually feels better. I'm not having any pain into my hip when I do that. And when she started bending backwards, she was like, oh, wow, I actually feel looser and I actually can bend backwards. And so that just right there, we're like, this is not a hip issue, this is a back issue. And we just need to have you do these press-ups every couple of hours. And what the things that are going to make it worse are going to be things that make you bend forward. So we just need to limit that for the short term. And why do we limit that for the short term? Because every time she bends forward and she hangs out there long enough, it's going to produce her pain. It's kind of like if you have a wound on your arm and you keep on stabbing that wound, it's never going to get better because you're stabbing the wound. So anytime she's bending forward, then that's going to be producing some of her symptoms, and we need to hold off doing that to allow her body to heal. So if I don't stab the wound and I'm taking the pressure off this area, it's going to heal. And then eventually when you go back to hitting it, doing whatever, it doesn't hurt. Same thing happens in the back. It's one, you know, we have, usually it's more of like a disc that produces this, and that the rings around that disc, which are called the annulus, they can get a little bit damaged and they can refer pain into a lot of different areas, but they can refer pain to the hip where it's not even a nerve that's being compressed or anything. It's just where the pain refers to. And so when you can take the pressure off that area by going in the reverse, you allow that area to heal, and then all of a sudden you're going to feel so much better. So literally within that first visit, after been hurting for a year, she got full resolution and she knew what she needed to do to take care of it. So that's what the exercise was. So again, if you like what you're hearing and you want to learn more, make sure you subscribe to our channel. We put out content all the time. We're just trying to get people to understand how the body works, so that it's not just as easy as doing this exercise or that exercise. There are some reasons and explanations why we do certain things, and we're trying to explain that in these videos. So I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.